Hello and welcome. My name's Colin. I'm here to take you through this week's Take Fives. We're going to be looking at the book of Daniel again. We're starting at chapter 6. Now, chapter 6 is a big chapter to start with. We've just had in chapter 5 the great writing on the wall behind the king Belshazzar. And Belshazzar doesn't know what to make of it. He gets all his wise people and says, what does that writing mean? And it's only really Daniel that can actually explain to him what it means. But it's not a good explanation. He's basically telling Belshazzar that the kingdom of Babylonian is going to be ripped apart. It's going to be taken over by the Medes, if that's how you pronounce it, and the Persians. And that's what happens, basically. And Darius, the Mede, comes in, takes over control, and he divides the nation into 120 different provinces, and then puts leaders over those provinces. And actually, because perhaps what of Daniel's reputation as being the only one who could explain what it all meant and prophesy this happened, he chooses Daniel as one of the supervisors over all of these provinces. So he's looking put in charge of the leaders of each of the provinces. Now, not everyone is happy about that. Some of the leaders would prefer someone else to be in control. Particularly this sort of Israelite guy who has a strange faith. Maybe they dislike him for that reason or for some other reason, but ultimately they take the ump and they decide to try and find fault in Daniel. But of course Daniel is a really upright chap. And he does what he's supposed to do at the time he's supposed to do it. He is faithful in what his actions. They just can't find any fault with him. So what they decide to do is turn a virtue into a vice. They sort of butter up the king's ego and say, "Look, king, you're so wonderful. You're amazing. You're godlike in your character." And wouldn't it be good to cement that godlike character in your kingdom by saying that over the next 30 days no one can pray to any god but to you, Darius? Oh, the king's pretty, any king, any dictator likes to have their ego pumped up a bit. And so he agrees to this rule and declares it across the nation. No one should pray to anybody but him. But of course, Daniel is a believer in God and he's faithful in his religious practices. He actually decides to carry on praying, even though the law says that he shouldn't. He's going to carry on his normal practice of 3 times a day praying to God. And he doesn't do it secretly, he openly does it. And of course, these other leaders catch him red-handed, present him to the king and say, "Look, king, your law said you shouldn't pray to anyone else, and here he is. Daniel has been breaking your law. The punishment of that law is to throw the criminal into a den of lions to be executed." And the king doesn't want this to happen. He knows what Daniel's like. He was the one that honoured him and put him in this position, and he hasn't done anything majorly disruptive to him, the king, but he's trapped by his own law. He's got to put Daniel to death. So he tentatively puts Daniel in the lion's den and says to Daniel, "Just pray that your God will save you." And he has a sleepless night and then rushes to the den and calls out, "Daniel, Daniel, are you still alive?" And Daniel, amazingly, is still alive. Daniel says, "God has closed the mouths of these lions." And the king is so amazed at this situation and says basically Daniel's God must be respected throughout the land. And because these other leaders trapped Daniel, he recognises the fact that he was manipulated and has all of them put to death in the den of lions. Now, obviously that's a bit gruesome in some ways and it's a bit stark in others, but I don't know about you, have you ever been criticised by your work colleagues because you're a bit of a teacher's pet when it comes to your employer, your boss? Have you always been doing the right thing because that's who you are. That's your character as a Christian, to be faithful in the work that you do. That may have happened to you too. I know it's happened to me once or twice in my life. But we stand strong on our faith. We have an obligation to actually work, not just as if we're working to rule, but actually because we feel we're working to honour God. We want to do our best in all our situations, not to please our boss necessarily, but to please God. And that sometimes is not looked too kindly on by those who don't want to do their best. And there are consequences sometimes to us acting in the right way, in the right manner in our work lives. But through this story, we recognise that being faithful to God can actually have wider implications. Daniel's dedication to God, although it put him in an incredibly risky position, we have a God who works through the impossible situations, transforming them into an opportunity to lift God's glory up and should reveal his glory to the world. And in this situation, the whole kingdom was ordered by the king to honour the God of Daniel because of his faithful stance. And who knows, if we take a faithful stance, if we honour God in our workplace, honour God through the way we work and the way that we live, how much of an impact will that have on the community around us? I'll leave you to think and pray through that today. God bless, and I'll see you tomorrow.